everybody thought the US sanctions would slow Huawei down completely. No advanced chips, no access to the best American tech, no easy way to compete with companies like Samsung, SK hynix, or even Nvidia. But Huawei just did something very interesting. The company quietly released a brand new SSD for AI servers and data centers, and the storage size is honestly insane. We're talking about 61 terabytes and 122 terabyte SSDs right now, with a future 245 terabyte version coming later. That is massive. To give you an idea, most people today still use 512 gigabytes or maybe 1 terabyte storage on their phones or laptops. Huawei is building SSDs over 100 terabytes. And the craziest part? They did this while being blocked from using the world's best NAND chips. This is where the China versus US tech war becomes really interesting. Because normally, to build super high-capacity SSDs, companies use advanced 3D NAND chips with very high layer counts. Samsung already has NAND with over 400 layers. More layers basically mean you can store more data in a smaller space. Simple. But there's a problem for Huawei. Those advanced NAND chips rely on American technology somewhere in the process, and because Huawei has been on the US Entity List since 2019, companies using American tech are not allowed to sell those chips to Huawei. So even if Samsung or SK hynix wanted to help, they basically can't. That means Huawei had to find another way. And instead of waiting for China's chip industry to catch up, Huawei engineers apparently said, fine, we'll build around the problem. And honestly, that's exactly what they did. Huawei worked with Chinese NAND technology from YMTC. Now, YMTC is good, but its NAND is still behind Samsung in layer count. Samsung has 400 plus layers. YMTC currently has around 232 layers. So Huawei had a disadvantage immediately. Less dense chips usually mean less storage capacity. But instead of accepting that limitation, Huawei changed the packaging itself. This is the really clever part. Normally, NAND memory comes inside traditional packages. Think of them like little storage blocks already wrapped up neatly before being placed onto the SSD. Huawei basically removed that whole idea. Instead, they used something called die-on-board packaging, or DOB. Now, don't worry about the complicated name, here's the simple version. Instead of putting packaged NAND chips onto the SSD, Huawei mounted the NAND dies directly onto the board itself. Directly. That allowed them to fit way more memory onto the SSD without needing the latest Samsung-style NAND technology. It's kind of like packing clothes into a suitcase without using bulky boxes first. You save space, and suddenly you can fit way more inside. That's basically what Huawei did with storage chips. And this is important because it shows something bigger happening in the China versus US tech battle. The US sanctions were designed to slow Huawei down by cutting access to advanced American-based technology. But instead of stopping completely, Huawei keeps finding workarounds. Sometimes those solutions are less efficient. Sometimes they use more power. Sometimes they are more complicated. But Huawei keeps moving forward anyway. We already saw this with Huawei's AI systems too. Their Cloud Matrix AI cluster reportedly competes with NVIDIA systems in some workloads, but it uses way more power to get there. So the strategy seems very clear now. If Huawei can't access the best technology directly, it will try to achieve similar results through scale, engineering tricks, and alternative designs. And honestly, that is becoming a huge story in the global tech industry. Because this is no longer just about phones. This is AI, data centers, cloud computing, storage, servers, the future internet infrastructure. That's why this SSD matters more than people think. At first glance, it just looks like another storage announcement. But underneath, it's actually a sign of how China's tech companies are adapting under pressure from the United States. And you can already see two completely different strategies happening right now. The US strategy is restriction, block access, slow China down, protect American tech leadership. China's strategy is adaptation. Build alternatives, create domestic supply chains, find engineering shortcuts, reduce dependence on American companies. And honestly, both sides are pushing each other harder because of it. The scary part, innovation sometimes moves faster under pressure. Huawei had no access to the best NAND chips, so now they're experimenting with completely different packaging technologies that could become important later. And if this works well long-term, we might see other Chinese companies start using similar ideas too. That could slowly reduce China's dependence on foreign NAND suppliers over time. Now, of course, there are still challenges. Packing NAND directly onto the board creates heat problems, signal problems, reliability concerns. So Huawei still has a lot to prove. But the fact they already launched real products means they probably solved enough issues to make this commercially viable. And honestly, this entire situation shows how intense the China versus US tech war has become. This is no longer just politics. It's becoming a battle over who controls the future of AI hardware, storage, semiconductors, and computing itself. And right now, Huawei is basically showing the world, if we can't buy the technology, we'll invent another way. That mindset alone is probably what worries the US the most.